Hi, today we are reading the book Hidden Figures. This is actually based off of a film titled Hidden Figures about 4 women who are astronauts and work. There are Black women in the space program. So Hidden Figures, a true story of 4 Black women and the space race. This is actually by New York Times bestselling author Margot Lee Shetterly and Winifred Kingman. It's illustrated by Laura Freeman. It actually received the Coretta Scott King Award, and it is a beautiful, peaceful, nonviolent book. Let's dive in. The 4 women are Katherine, Dorothy, Mary, and Christine. They were all good at math. Are you good at math? Math can be really fun. Hidden Figures. The true story of 4 Black women in the space race by Margot Lee Shetterly and Winifred Kingman. Illustrated by Laura Freeman. Dorothy Vaughan, Mary Jackson, Katherine Johnson, and Kristen Darden were good at math. Really good. In 1943, the United States was at war. World War II. Dorothy Vaughan wanted to serve her country by working for the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics and the government agency that designed airplanes. Having the best airplanes would help America win the war. Making airplanes fly faster and higher and safer meant doing lots of tests at the agency's Langley Laboratory in Hampton, Virginia. Test meant numbers. Numbers meant math, and math meant computers. Today, we think of computers as machines, but in the 1940s, computers were actually people like Dorothy, Mary, Katherine, and Christine. Their job was to do the math. Can you imagine doing the math that a computer could do in seconds? Crazy, right? Because Dorothy was Black and a woman, some people thought it would be impossible for her to get a job as a computer. She lived in Virginia, a southern state, where laws segregated or kept people apart, Black people and white people. They could not eat at the same restaurant. They could not drink from the same water fountains. They could not use the same restrooms. They could not attend the same schools. They could not play on the same sports teams. They could not sit near each other in the movies. They could not marry someone of a different race. And Dorothy didn't think it was impossible. She was good at math. Really good. She knew she was the right person for the job. She applied, and the laboratory offered her a position as a computer. At work, Blacks and whites were kept apart. The white computers worked in one building, and Dorothy and the other Black computers worked in a different building, in their separate office. Even though they worked on the same kinds of assignments, the Black computers and white computers used separate bathrooms and ate in separate lunchrooms. Can you imagine having to be separate from other people? So strange. America won the war in 1945, but Dorothy stayed on the job, still trying to make airplanes faster and safer. By 1951, the Americans and the Russians were competing to see who could build the best airplanes. That meant more experiments and more numbers. Lots and lots of numbers. And more numbers meant the need for more computers. That's when Mary Jackson got a job as a computer at Langley. She worked in a group that was testing model airplanes in wind tunnels. A wind tunnel is a machine with a huge metal box with powerful fan attached. Mary put model airplanes in the wind tunnel and blasted them with air from the fan. This experiment helped her group and improve the designs on the models before building the full-size airplanes. So Mary was helping to build smaller versions of the big airplanes you see at the airport that take off in the sky. Mary wanted to become an engineer, but officials said it was impossible. Most of the engineers at the laboratory were men, and to become an engineer, Mary needed to take high-level math classes. But she wasn't allowed to go inside But she wasn't allowed to go inside the white school where the classes were taught. But Mary was good at math. Really good. And she refused to give up. She got permission to enter the school building and take math classes, and she earned good grades because she didn't give up. Mary Jackson became the first African-American female engineer at the laboratory. Katherine Johnson was good at math and always asked lots of questions. In 1953, she applied to the laboratory for the computer job and was placed on a team that tested actual airplanes while they were flying in the air. Their research was used to figure out ways to prevent airplane crashes. In one of her first projects, she learned how to analyze turbines, or the dangerous gust of air. No one knows how many lives her work may have saved. So Mary helped figure out how to better function when the wind changes. Have you ever been outside and you're playing with your friends or your brother like soccer, and all of a sudden the wind shifts and your hair's everywhere and you can't see? That's basically what turbulence is. But on a bigger scale, and when it happens to an airplane, it can be a lot scarier. So Katherine was really good at looking at these big planes and figuring out how to make this plane stable and safe while dealing with those wild gusts of air. Katherine wanted to help the group prepare its research reports. So she asked if she could go to a meeting with the other experts on her team. Her boss told her it was impossible. Women aren't allowed to attend meetings, he said. But Katherine knew she was as good at math as anyone else. Maybe even better. So she asked him again, and again, and again. Katherine asked her boss so many times he finally invited her to the meeting. Katherine was good at math. Really good. And because she fought to be treated like the same as the men, she became the first woman in her group to sign her name on one of the group's reports. In the 1950s, the Langley Laboratory bought a machine of computers that could do math faster than human computers. At first, these machines made mistakes. Dorothy learned how to program the machine so they got the right answers. She then taught women in her group how to program the computers too. In 1957, Russia launched a satellite known as Sputnik into orbit around the Earth. The United States started building satellites to explore space too. For years, the laboratory had used math to design airplanes. Now it would need math to create spaceships as well. The government decided to change the name of the agency from the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics to the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, NASA. In 1961, President John F. Kennedy told Congress, "I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to Earth." A man on the moon? But the first step to getting a man on the moon was to send an astronaut around the Earth. NASA was going to need to hire more space experts and more people who are good at math. Really good. So if you're liking this story, I would definitely recommend finishing it with your parents. You could ask them to buy it in the link below. But Hidden Figures is an amazing story about space and exploration and science and engineering, and if any of this sounds interesting, you should definitely mention it to your parents, because there's a lot of great resources out there about camp and other interesting things you can learn, and fun science and space museums that you can learn more about these women and space. Until next time.